Welcome to The Weekly Wisdom, a podcast published by Metis, an Ethereum Layer 2 solution committed to making the blockchain accessible to the people. In this podcast, we'll discuss the ever-expanding uses of blockchain technology, and you'll meet the creators, developers, and thinkers behind some of the most exciting projects in decentralized finance, NFTs, the metaverse, and beyond. I'm your host, Ashley Spradlin, and this is The Weekly Wisdom. In this episode, Matt, our head of content at Metis, will join me for a conversation with Natasha, the CEO of Netswap, and Wesso, a strategy and partnerships leader and developer with Beefy Finance. Netswap is the first ever native Layer 2 decentralized exchange, or DEX. It is also the native DEX on Metis Andromeda, an official Metis partner. As a fork of Uniswap, Netswap offers many exciting features that bring a great addition to our DeFi ecosystem. Beefy Finance is a multi-chain yield optimizer. Beefy provides consistently optimized auto-compounding vaults on both Netswap and Tethys farms. We love Beefy's product offerings and the project's vision of a multi-chain future that aligns directly with ours, both major drivers in forging a Metis-Beefy partnership. If none of that made sense to you, don't worry, I got you. This episode will serve as an introduction to Decentralized Finance, or DeFi, and provide a little context on how you can join the community. We'll also continue to provide episodes explaining some of the more nuanced topics in DeFi, so feel free to connect with us through the links in our show notes to let us know what you'd like to learn more about. And on our call today, we have Matt.
I'm the head of content and on the marketing and biz dev team at Metis.
And Wesso from Beefy Finance.
Hi, everybody. I lead strategic partnerships, and I'm also a developer for Beefy Finance.
Thank you. And Natasha from Netswap.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha Neston, and I'm CMO of Netswap.
So just to get started, this is just kind of an overall discussion of decentralized finance, and you two are some of our biggest partners in that. So I wanted to start with Wesso and see if you could just give us a general definition of what DeFi is.
Sure. So without getting into like all of the different buzzwords, when you hear about DeFi, really it's, getting rid of like the centralized control or the custody of like, somebody holding control of your funds and being able to interact and make trades, lend, be able to earn yields, all in a decentralized fashion. So basically, what Beefy does, we go ahead and put the contracts out there and anybody can go ahead and interact with them. So it's, you personally interacting with a contract. There's no like middle person. We just kind of have our UI up. And so decentralized finance is kind of, getting rid of that portion of the world. So you can, freely go and, play with a whole different set of like, traditional finance tools in a decentralized way.
Natasha, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I like what Wesso just said. I just want to add that I love DeFi, and one feature I think is important that is that DeFi has a lower thresholds than traditional finance. So everyone has the access to DeFi, including the unbanked population, including the retail investors, and all those who values privacy and wants to doing their financing anonymously. So yeah.
It's actually a really good point. Like in the United States, in order to like do day trading or something like that, if you wanted to make multiple trades, you have certain like limits and guidelines, and decentralized finance gives a lot of people the opportunity to go in, make multiple trades and trade a whole bunch of different assets, and it's the freedom that you kind of have.
And in DeFi, you don't have those regional restrictions.
Yeah, for sure.
So for somebody who is brand new to DeFi and they were coming from a very centralized traditional finance system, what are some things that you would explain to them to just kind of get them started, or kind of an entry point for them?
Well, I think just getting familiar with, how the blockchain sort of works. So I think that's like really the one point from somebody coming from like the centralized world where you're like mostly making trades on exchanges, is just getting used to okay, I have my address, I have to pay for gas for transactions. How do I interact with all these different protocols? Really the baseline understanding of like what an AMM is, or decentralized exchange. Then what we do, like yield optimization and how farming sort of works. So I think there's like a definitely like a learning curve when it comes to like actually interacting with decentralized finance, like much larger than it is on like a centralized exchange type world. So you have to kind of understand how to actually interact with the blockchains. Now there's so many different networks and blockchains. So like, how do you bridge funds? How do I move my funds? Fiat like on ramps and off ramps. So I think that there's a learning experience, and I think Beefy in itself, it's something that we've definitely identified. If we want to continue to get more retail engagement, expand the user base beyond people who are really more advanced crypto users, then there has to be some sort of, I think, education on our end in order to get people more familiar and understand exactly what they're interacting with, how to interact, how to move funds. So I think the ownership on that, I think, is all of the different protocols, right? We have to be able to build out our content to become a little bit more easy to understand. But it's definitely a challenge, I think, from going from a centralized exchange to trying to interact with DeFi right now.
Yeah, I think I've just started to kind of navigate that for myself. So it's exciting to feel like there's a new opportunity for having more autonomy, and a little more control, and having access to more. But there's also this increased level of responsibility and understanding how everything works. And it can be a little intimidating. So I have been doing so much like research, and there are a lot of educational resources on it. But having calls like this is really helpful because we can work to develop the gaps in those learning resources for people. So Natasha, can I come to you now? Why would you say that DeFi is important?
I actually want to add something to what Sol said. As we know that many new DeFi users came from centralized exchanges, and Netswap is a decentralized exchange, and you can tell a big difference from that because I was using centralized exchanges myself, and you can have the feeling that your assets are not holding your own real wallet. Your assets was in the wallet of that exchange, and I'm not saying that it's not secure. It can be secure, but when you are withdraw your assets or deposit your assets through that centralized exchange, maybe you can have a long waiting period or something that you are not actually controlling your own funds. But in decentralized exchange, it's totally different. Your assets are in your own wallet, and you are controlling your private key. So you don't need any authorities approved to transfer your assets or do anything else on it. So I hope everyone can enjoy the feeling of that. And of course, there are a lot of education we need to provide to users who come from centralized exchanges, and then doing those education like our user guides and we are also educating people in our community. Yeah. I think my internet is kind of interrupt. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yeah, there was a little break, but we definitely got most of what you said. And I definitely agree. I mean, it goes back to the not your keys, not your crypto. So just that idea of ownership and sovereignty, and with centralized exchanges, you can have limits on your withdrawals, or your account can get flagged for whatever reason. So there are all these barriers that come into play. But then, yeah, weighted on the other side is that responsibility of being that final line of custody. And it, especially for new users, if they're not comfortable, that could be something that they kind of need to weigh between those two decision points on. But yeah, we can go into the next question. So Natasha, back to you. If you could just touch on why you think DeFi is important.
I think one important thing is defining, as I just mentioned, It really reduced the limit of those regional restrictions. Like if you are in a very centralized financial system, and there are a lot of things that is restricted, but in DeFi everything is different, and it also reduced the cost of international financial transactions. I think this is a very great point. And as a world, as the international world is coming together, I like it's like coming, it's like moving to a big associated hub. DeFi can be more and more important under this kind of situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, one of the other things that has been coming up a lot in the crypto world recently is trust. And, you know, we saw it with the wormhole hack and various other hacks in recent times. So I guess one question that we have is how do you engender trust in DeFi?
You have to live like your whole purpose is safety, right? I think like if you really want to exceed as a protocol in DeFi and you're not just here to be like a flash in the pan, you have to like play with like security and safety as your number one. And so we have very rigorous safety standards. So with any of the protocols we're interacting with, we go through a whole audit process to make sure that the code looks good. You know, we have like a team of 10 or 12 Solidity developers. So we're actively looking at code like pretty much every single day. So and most of it, honestly, you know, right now, decentralized finance is, you know, there's someone who comes up with a concept, right, or develops a code base, and then somebody forks that code base and makes an, you know, improvements or better, and then somebody forks that code base, and it's like this, you know, continuous loop. And so, you know, because of that, it makes it a little bit easier because you can kind of like look at trusted code bases and say, okay, well, we know this works or this doesn't work, and you can look for like malicious, you know, functions that are kind of added in there. And then it's also like anything that can possibly take custodial or custody of your funds, you know, has to have some sort of protection in it, right? So like the contracts themselves, maybe you have to have a time lock or have, you know, a multi-sig wallet or, you know, something that can help prevent it from being exposed. So I think like, you know, as a protocol, you have to take all of those different actions, right? Like, so if you're going to interact with partners, you're going to build on top of other protocols, you know, it's on you to make sure that, you know, you're interacting with, you know, safe and trusted protocols. And then at the same time, your code base has to be secure. So if you're having, you know, some sort of, you know, centralized control function, you know, make sure that it's not like a EOA or just a normal wallet that's in control of it, where somebody can, you know, possibly get hacked and their keys get stolen, and all of a sudden they have centralized control of your protocol. So there's a lot of like, I think, safety measures protocols have to take. So the longer I think you're in this world, you know, the more trust you can build, because obviously you've been here long and you have like this now history of everything you've kind of done and whether or not you've, you know, sort of like been exploited or had issues before. And the second time, I think it's being transparent with your community about like, here are all the measures we're taking in order to make sure that everything is safe. If there's something that we do as a protocol have control over, you know, we're very transparent about our communication about that. So if we have a function that has centralized control of things, then if we're going to, like, let's say, you know, we have a time lock in place and we're going to execute some sort of action that's going to move something, you know, we're transparent with the community that this is happening, right? So I think there's a lot of things as a protocol you can kind of do to build that trust. But, you know, unfortunately, you know, it's hard enough to understand. We're just talking about like actually interacting with DeFi. So it's even harder to understand all of the stuff behind the scenes to make sure that, oh, I completely, you know, you kind of just have to have blind trust sometimes because people don't know how to read the code, right? So what can we do to prevent the blind trust aspect and be as transparent as we can about our security and safety standards? And I think, you know, some users rely on like audits and stuff, but I think it's really on the protocols themselves to make sure that they're trying to do everything they can to remain safe and keep the space safe.
Yeah, transparency is always a big point in terms of security. And I think in DeFi one another great feature is everything is on the chain, so everything can be transparent for to our users. Even if some users cannot understand those complex smart contracts, but they are still transparent, and you can check all the data, all the records online. I mean on chain. And also Netswap is communicating with our community about every big step of our security upgrade. And also we are using the multi-sig wallet now, and in the future when the DAO function opens, we will have the time lock. So and yeah, everyone can check it on the Andromeda Explorer.
Yeah, that was an important thing, right? Like, I think as a user, if you're going to start interacting with all these different contracts, that might be helpful for you to just make sure that they have verified contracts on the Explorer. I see that as a major flaw. So a lot of times, and that's, I think, one of the interesting issues, right? Because sometimes people, build a code base and then they're not open source. So you really can't see any of the code. And then they don't verify it on the Explorer. So you have no idea what you're interacting with. And then, sometimes they'll say, okay, well, it's because I don't want to give away like competitive advantage to somebody else. Well, in this space, it just doesn't work like that. We need to be as transparent and open as we can. Try to keep your source, if you can, open source is better, but if it's not, at least get it verified on the Explorer so people know what they're interacting with. So I think that there's a few things, like as a new user to maybe like DeFi, a few checks you can do to, like, we always say, do your own research. I think it's important as a user to do your own research, and there's a couple like safety checks you can do to help, make the place a little bit more, I think, safe for yourself.
Yeah, that's also something I want to say to those new DeFi users, because when you're using like centralized exchanges, they are not transparent. Their system, they are like how they deal with their funds. It's not transparent. You cannot see it, but in DeFi you are able to check it yourself. So do your own research.
Thank you. So kind of moving into how you've decided to kind of deploy Netswap, why did you choose layer 2?
Layer 2, like Vitalik said, layer 2 is the future of Ethereum scaling solution. And I want to use an interesting metaphor here. So like if the blockchain is a big city, and if there is a very wide road in the city, but only one road, even if it is very wide, but as many people are walking on the road, it can be crowded. It's like Ethereum. If everyone is using Ethereum, no matter how advanced it is, it will be crowded one day. But if this city has more roads, more roads in the city, like more tunnels, more highways, it will be people will have more choices. So this is like a layer 2 solution where we are providing people more fast and cheap options. And also many people think that layer 2 is the infrastructure of the future metaverse. I think this is interesting, and we are also helping. We also want to help Metis to build its ecosystem of the metaverse future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I really like that metaphor. And just to dig a bit deeper into your thinking, it's interesting that you guys chose a community-focused fair launch when most go the typical VC route. Can you expand on your thought process around that, please?
So at the beginning, Netswap is designed to be a community driving project. So this is based on like we've talked about it in the previous questions. We want to and we want to we want our project to be not to be more decentralized. That is the key point. And also we like the decentralized anonymous company um, made by Metis. So this community-based feature is also coming from this. And also we believe that if we want to build a decentralized, if we want to build a brand with decentralized feature, we need to get more community to be engaged in it. This project is not controlled by the team, by ourselves. It will be controlled by the community, and people will have the right to change anything on Netswap. I think it will be very interesting for a new DeFi project.
Do you think you could talk through, just for anyone who's like unsure of how that governance system works, could you explain how the community would go about creating those changes in a DAO-like structure?
Do you mean how the community can participate?
Yes.
Okay, sure. So, for example, we have several funds on Netswap. Like we are having Metis farm, WETH and farm, and in the future, when the governance function opens, users will have the right to vote and add more farms or delete the old farms. So when they find an interesting project on Metis, and they can vote to decide whether to add this add the token of this project on Netswap farm. It would be interesting because we want more people to be engaged in it. And also we will have like a swap transaction function. We will have the swap mining function. It's like in swap mining, users will farm an ETT token by swap. And this function is writing in our contract, but we haven't activated it yet. So users can decide whether to open or close this function when governance opens. And also we can have more interesting proposals in the future. And we believe that the community can be very innovative.
Awesome. Thank you. So Wesso, with Beefy, I've noticed that you have the cutest branding, like the cows and your little like t-shirts and stuff. And to see something that's like eye-catching like that in a DeFi world, which can be a little bit dry, I'm interested in how y'all came up with this kind of brand for your community.
You know, it's funny. So I wasn't actually an original like founder or anything for Beefy. Beefy in itself is a DAO, and it had 4 original founders, and I came on a few months into the project, just doing some development work because I, was playing around, and actually like at the time it was Binance Smart Chain. It was like one of the first, EVM chains that like kind of like launched and caught fire with all of the stuff going on. And so I was playing around in that ecosystem. I found Beefy, and I was like, oh, it'd be fun to like contribute and develop there. And so I caught on as a developer, and started incrementally increasing my responsibility. But the whole point, or what the founders really wanted to do, was have this, form this DAO and really have the DAO then lead the project, right? And not have the founders lead the project. And so over the course of the year, that transition sort of happened, right? And so the founders kind of, incrementally, left control to the DAO and to the contributor base. And so now at this point in time, we're actually completely contributor run, and the founders are no longer really with the project. So though they obviously want to see the project succeed, and every once in a while we have to like lean on them maybe for some historical help. They are pretty much, it's just run by these now contributors, and the DAO kind of is in control of all of the contributors. So the DAO is leads the whole project. So because of that, I never got to ask the question of why the cow. But I have a whole bunch of theories along the lines of, what possibly, could be why we named it what it is. But the beefy cow in itself now, like the community has owned it. So, everybody's really tied in. I think we actually pretty much inside all of the space are known as Beefy now, right? One of our community members actually bought us beefy.com and gifted it to us. So now we actually own beefy.com, which is kind of cool. And so a lot of times, because we have like this, I guess, fun, cow and all of our imagery, and we have, some great graphic design contributors. We had a contributor, we were, always talked about doing some sort of like gear with it, right? So like, how can we expand, or be able to like give people the option to, wear, beefy cow gear and stuff like that. And so we had a contributor come up and actually develop us a gear website. And now we get community contributors that give us designs. And so we're able to then put those on, shirts and hats and all those sorts of things. So the branding, like, originally, I think it was just, hey, like, what can we do that's kind of unique is what I'm guessing is what they kind of went with. And it developed into something the community is really owned. And now it's, it's fun to see like so many different community members come and like come up with all these ideas and really like take ownership of like even just the wearables and be able to, do really kind of fun, like, art with it. So it is fun to have, I think, like, a fun design and fun symbol. It kind of lightens up the mood a little bit too, because DeFi can be really overwhelming. So we can kind of lighten that up a little bit, because you just have like now this like cartoon cow that you're like interacting with all your funds.
Yeah, it's adorable.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's cool hearing your origin story of, moving from founder owned to community run. And I believe all three of our projects here, we're planning on being fully community governed by Q3. And Natasha, you touched a bit on that. So I'm wondering, Natasha, when you're planning on moving forward into that, how are you planning on navigating the give and take from launching as a project with aspects of centralization and then moving into decentralization?
So for Netswap, as I just mentioned, we will have a DAO function, that is governance function, opening in March this year. So at the beginning, we have some. We also have having some rules set by the team. So according to Netswap Light paper, and in net farming, there is an additional 10% of each output rewards that will be issued to the dev team for technical incentives and project maintenance, like our salaries. So that in the future, people will have the right to decide whether to maintain this 10% of our team incentive, or delete this, or they can actually figure out a way to incentive Netswap team, and that can be very interesting. And I think it's this is a very big step to decentralization. And also we had an airdrop in our fair launch. So at the beginning, 1% of net token was airdropped to the community, but there are still a little bit of net token that people haven't claimed from this distribution. And also there are also there are 40,000 net tokens from our first team incentive, but we moved those net token to community treasury, and yeah, you can check those net tokens in our community treasury contract. And in the future, the community will have the right to decide how to use this community treasury. They can decide to use them for incentives or use them for more marketing plans, something like that. Yeah, we are trying to get the community to be engaged in our project, and they can actually make decisions and grow with us in the future.
Awesome. Yeah. And what could you elaborate quickly on the rollout of that and how I guess the timeline, if that's public information?
Do you mean the timeline of our?
I guess when governance will come into play, is it a slow rollout, or just what your plan is for that?
Well, the governance function is going to be released in March, and the detailed date is not announced yet. But after the governance goes live, users will be able to make their proposals instantly. Yeah.
Awesome. It's very exciting.
I'm also looking forward to those amazing proposals and how are they gonna decide to deal with this community treasury.
You kind of touched on this a little bit, and I'm kind of skipping over a question for Wessa. We'll come back to you. Because you mentioned it for a moment, I wanted to kind of dive a little deeper into how you made the decisions on how many tokens to release when you're structuring incentives. Like, what does that kind of discussion look like? What things do you consider?
So in the early stage, we mainly decided which tokens to incentivize based on the community feedback, market data, and our partnerships. But in the future, we will be more inclined to incentivize those native projects on Metis because our original intention is to help to build this Metis and Meta ecosystem, and this is also what we are doing right now. And also, as a community-driven project, we will also leave it to the community to make more decisions after the governance module starts. And also about the reward pool, it's based on the user experience and the analysis of market data. And also recently we are discussing with more projects to for the new updates of our rewards pool. And yeah, we just reached a deep partnership with Relay Chain that we just opened the rewards pool of Relay token for the net single staking, and also we will open more farm pools in the near future.
Thank you. Yeah, I was kind of learning more about the DeFi world in general and talking with some people on our team, and we were asking about, how do they make those decisions? So it's interesting that I appreciate that you're continually trying to make it a more community-led decision. Kind of heading back over into what Beefy does. So could you explain how auto compounding to a new DeFi user?
Yeah, so I think the requirement is to know what yield farming is.
Yeah.
So, and I've been thinking about, trying to explain this in the best way I possibly can to like people who are like unfamiliar with the crypto space. So like, what exactly does Beefy do, right? Like, so I think first is to understand, what a yield farm is. So for like, let's say Netswap, for example, you have a Metis USDC or something, farm. So you're depositing your liquidity token into a farm, and then you're earning net as a reward, right? So it's great. And usually you can get pretty high interest rates, and people like earning, decentralized exchanges token, or, whatever the protocol is that you're interacting with, the yield farm, earning their token. But what we give you the opportunity to do is, instead of just earning like net, and you wanted to earn, let's say, more Metis and USDC LP, you deposit it to Beefy, the LP. Then we farm for you the net token. Then we sell it for each of, half Metis and half USDC. Then we add more liquidity and then deposit it back into our strategy. And so what ends up happening is, now instead of you earning, APR, so you're earning, simple interest on the side and net token, we're continually increasing your deposit amount. And so now you get the magical effect of compounding. And so you continue to earn more of whatever you deposited. So at Beefy, it's the beautiful thing is you always deposit something, you earn more of whatever you deposit. And so, we do that in a variety of different ways. Sometimes it's with decentralized exchanges. Sometimes it's with, protocols that are sort of like launching and they want us to help, add liquidity, because liquidity is very important, especially for a new protocol. You got to be able to, trade your token if you want to actually have value with your token. So we help, protocols build up liquidity that way. We also have throughout the different, ecosystems, we work with like lending protocols, maximizing, through like a layered lending strategy. We're basically doing essentially the same thing, harvesting the rewards that you give, and then selling it for more of whatever the deposit is. So we're giving you, the capability to earn maybe on like a single asset like Ethereum or like Bitcoin or something like that. So essentially, that's what an auto compounder does. Is the whole strategy is you deposit something, whatever you want to earn, you deposit it in, and we compound for you and give you more back of whatever you deposited.
Thank you. That was really helpful. Very clear.
That's really, really very user friendly, because we know that many users just want to do one click and for the whole operation, and Beefy is doing that for this kind of users.
It's awesome, especially for new users, like just that having that hands-off approach, trusting the experts to optimize your yield and all that. So I guess that takes us into our next question. Obviously, you have a breadth of experience with different chains and different strategies. So when you're considering the different yield optimization strategies, like what are you looking at? What makes something more or less optimal?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing I think we talked about a little bit earlier is the safety of the protocol we're working with. So the first thing we look at Beefy is, okay, well, like let's look at the contracts and dive into them and see like how safe the contracts we're going to interact with are. So if they meet all of our safety checks, they can move on to like the next phase, right? And then we look at like, what's the actual opportunity? So, is there, TVL inside the farm? Is the protocol expanding? What does the partnership opportunity sort of look like? So we take all those into consideration. We like to talk to the protocols to kind of see exactly what kind of like co-partnership type opportunities we can do. And then we move on to, actually developing out like the strategies themselves. So it depends on the underlying contracts, so, how complex they are or what we have to do. But we've been around for, I think it's now 1 year and like almost 6 months. So a year and a half, which in, this DeFi space, it's like, an OG thing, but when it's even in crypto, it's like a long time to be, over a year old. So we've looked at, countless, contracts. So we developed out a whole bunch of like custom strategies and be able to pretty much interact with whatever protocol wants to partner with us and come up with a really fun and unique idea on how to, maximize whatever they're trying to accomplish. But yeah, I'd say that's really what we kind of look for, right? Safety first, then, what's the size of the opportunity? And then, what's the demand going to be like for the users? And a lot of times we get a lot of feedback from our community that come in and say, hey, can you partner with this protocol or can you do that? So we take a lot of that feedback and then, go back to the development team and see what we can accomplish.
Awesome. So I kind of, to start to wrap things up a bit, if I were just kind of going over Beefy the benefits that I see of just making things very user friendly, and really beginner friendly. At Metis, we have this blockchain for everyone kind of attitude where we want to make it accessible to people who really are not familiar with the space. I was really impressed with learning about your Zap feature. Could you explain a little bit about what that is and what prompted you to introduce that?
Yeah, so it's something we've actually been trying to make the experience easier for users has been something we've been really trying to eye on, especially as of late. One thing we noticed early on is that it's already complex, like interacting and understanding what you're doing and all this, right? So we wanted to make it a little bit easier for the users to interact with Beefy. So instead of having to leave Beefy, so okay, I identified I want to deposit into this liquidity pool, right, on Netswap or something, and I want to maximize my yield by using the auto compounding on Beefy. Prior to us developing the Zap feature, you'd have to leave Beefy, go and swap for whatever the 2 tokens you want in equal amounts, then go and add liquidity, then come back to Beefy, then deposit that liquidity pool token on Beefy in order to get the rewards. Then after you're finished with whatever the yield, the farming that you're doing, you leave Beefy and go back and remove liquidity. Then you swap out of whatever token you want to the other token. And now you're back, okay, well, I got, now I'm complete, right? So I complete that whole cycle. So we're like, okay, how can we make that experience easier? So we came up with the Zap feature. So as a user, let's say that you want to invest in, net Metis, right, pool. You can come in with just Metis and click it and say, okay, I have, 10 Metis and I want to zap into this LP position and start yield farming. The Zap function for you automatically sells half, creates the liquidity pool token, and deposits in the Beefy vault. So you don't have to leave and go do all those steps for you. It does it all for you. Then you want to leave your position, you could just do the exact opposite, zap back out to Metis and go on with your way. So it's something that we've kind of kept top of mind is how can we incrementally make the user experience easier for new users, and being able to come to Beefy with 1 token and enter into a vault position and doing the same on the exit just made it so much easier for our users to interact with yield farming.
Yeah, it's much less intimidating.
Yeah, I think, in general, once you'll see, we actually are coming out with V2 version of our UI. You'll see a whole bunch of features there. So we're trying to do as best we can to have, one, as much information as possible. So, what can we give the user to make, good investment decisions or their own investment decisions? So let me give you all the data, right? Historical APY of the vault, or, the TVL of the vault, or, what's the price map look like? What's the strategy Beefy is using? Can you give me a little bit of info on the underlying tokens? So all of that information is going to be accessible on V2 Beefy UI. So when you come to Beefy, you don't only have to have 1 token, right? You can just zap into whatever vault you want. And also we kind of give you all of the information to make an informed decision on whether or not you should invest. So we're trying to make the user experience a little bit easier, especially for people who are new to DeFi, or even if you're an advanced user and you want to look at historical APYs to see, hey, okay, well, how is this fluctuating? Is it just going to, die down as soon as I enter the position, or is the history of the APY pretty consistent? So we're giving you all that information.
That's excellent.
Yeah, I think the next level, right? The next step is fiat to in the vault, right? On 1 click. So I think that's the next thing, right? So that you don't have to, find a way to get your funds onto the blockchain. Beefy can help you on ramp and into the vault without you having to do multiple steps. So just incrementally, how can we continue to make the user experience better?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. Definitely keep us posted on the fiat on ramp. That's great. So switching gears, Natasha, there is a launch pad coming out on Netswap. Can you talk to us a bit about that and tell us how it's symbiotic with an exchange and your community focused approach?
Yeah, sure. So Launchpad is our first product to enable the amazing usabilities of Nets token. And also this is the intention, the original intention of our Launchpad is to help more native projects on Andromeda to build. And also we want to help this as an infrastructure, not only normal DEX. We want to provide more functionalities, more infrastructures to this huge ecosystem, and Launchpad is our first step. And also the ideal projects in our Launchpad partnership will have more deeper collaborations with Netswap DEX, like we can cooperate in terms of farming incentives. We can cooperate to boost the liquidity. We know that liquidity is a very important thing for any project, and it's also important for Netswap. And we will have more functionalities for this Launchpad in the future. And also, we just announced our first Launchpad partnership with Metis. And this is Metis will be one of the first NFT games on Metis Andromeda. It's very interesting. I know that we're trying to build more interesting metaverse games on Andromeda, and Metis will be one of our first steps. Yeah, and like Binance Smart Chain, NFT games can boost more activeness to any blockchain, and yeah, this will be super interesting. And as an exchange, we are happy to cooperate with those game projects to boost more liquidity and help them to build.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'm looking forward to the first launch.
We will announce the ideal timeline for this project soon. And also in our Launchpad, as we are a community-driven project, so we want to enable everyone to have the access to the Launchpad. So I did an AMA several weeks ago to introduce the Launchpad function of Netswap, and there will be 2 tiers in Netswap Launchpad. That is primary tier and unlimited tier. Those 2 tiers can give some choice to retail investors if they just want to give a try and invest a little bit of assets, they can choose primary tier. But for those people who hold a lot of assets, and they can choose unlimited tier. So people will have their choices. Yeah, and that will make a big difference, because Launchpad, because IDOs was previously like a privilege to those whales and institutions, and so stay tuned.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really exciting. And it's great that you took an approach that opens up to everyone, even those that aren't whales. I mean, I've had experience with different launch pads, and it was very much the case that it wasn't accessible to your average person. They tend to get priced out. So that's really great that you have that primary tier.
Yeah, and also we also provide choices to Metis holders and net holders. So they can stake Metis or net or both to get their allocation.
Very cool.
Well, thank you all so much for sitting on this call with us. We've learned so much from each of you. I just wanted to see if there's anything else that you'd like to share. You can tell our users like where to learn more about your prospective projects. Also, let's start with you.
Okay. Just so you can go to beefy.com. Really simple, really easy now. And then we're coming out with our V2 UI. So really excited to showcase that to a larger crowd. But right now you can take a look at it if you want at beta.beefy.finance. You can follow us on Twitter at Beefy Finance. Come join our Discord community. Come join our Telegram. We're, like I said earlier, we're community contributor run DAO. So if you want to participate, please come help and participate. We're always looking for active contributors and people want to help further the project along. So come talk to us, come chat with us.
Thank you so much. I'll be sure to include all those links in our show notes. Natasha?
So if you go to netswap.io and click stake tab, you will see that we are having a net single stake event for earning relay tokens, and the APY is great. And if you go to Netswap farm, you can still find that great APR from our farm, even our farm has been open for several weeks. And also you can find our farm on beefy.com and enjoy more user-friendly operations. And also you can follow us on Twitter, search for Netswap, or join our Telegram community if you have any more questions.
All right, fam, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Weekly Wisdom. Be sure to check out our show notes to learn more about our partners from today's show. There, you'll also find links to resources to connect with the Metis team, learn more about our permissionless platform, and connect with us on future podcast content. We would also love for you to take a moment to rate and review this podcast to support our mission of bringing blockchain to the people. Until next time.